Mincy!
Good morning, Whaley. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Lucky to be...
Yeah.
What did you say, sorry?
Happy summer to you. I don't know if that's even a saying, but it just felt like now that the summer is actually here for one day, we should do that.
I felt like we're almost celebrating summer going. It'll be autumn next week. You know it.
Good. You know me, I hate these luxurious hot days. And hello to everyone in property world. Where literally, as I was saying to you before, Mincy, I don't know why we've jumped on here. There's nothing happening, is there? You told me there's a lot that's going on.
I think there's a lot that's interesting. But the only reason I agreed to do this podcast today is because I don't get to see you any other way.
Yeah, this is how.
So this is quite nice actually, and I'm glad you opened with the summer. My question to you: if the weather was miserable and it was cold and sleety,
I love that. I love it.
But if it was, do you think the far right would say, "Nah,
no,
I'm just not going to do this to them"?
Not today. No, let's leave it to them. Let's leave it to the Liberals. The wider world's been obviously interesting to say the least, hasn't it? That's
What's your take on it, Wayne? Before we move on to property news.
I was going to say it's been unbelievable. I mean, we're both obviously from this fine city of Manchester, and I was a little bit disturbed that and call them what they are the far right, actually dared to turn up, because normally when they turn up to the fine northern cities of Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, they don't make it out of the station, do they? Or somebody hilariously plays the Benny Hill music over them as they all run away. So it was a little bit upsetting to see that do it, but it was wonderful seeing all the counter protests come back and everything else. And my either justice or karma has been quick, hasn't it? I mean, that really is. Given the way that the whole criminal justice system is collapsing around it, shows when they put their minds to it what you can get away with.
Well, to bring it into the property arena, can you imagine if they did the same thing when it comes to evicting tenants?
Yeah.
It would speed up the whole process. Forget about Section 21. We're quite happy to lose that if the court system catches up with us. I think this has all been...
the only other quicker resolution of a massive scrap, that was Rightmove and what's it? Open Home this week, wasn't it? That was the
I think I think that is a huge piece of news, and I think the negotiator asked this question, but it's true. Who blinked first? Was it Rightmove? Who is it worth more to? Is it worth more to Openrent? Is it worth more to Rightmove?
I don't know. In the way you'd have to, surely you'd imagine Openrent would have the most to lose, because I can imagine them having the pitch to the landlords that they can get it on the biggest and best portal, as obviously Rightmove would copyright it. That would be quite a big thing for them. But this is one of those ones, in the way that, when you negotiate and you get a contract and it's right that both parties should win. This one was very much, I feel that both were going to lose, weren't they, if they didn't come to a... It's
got to be significant enough financially. I mean, let's just go through the numbers a little bit. Openrent represents approximately 700 branch equivalents to Rightmove, with less than 8% of Rightmove's 8% of Rightmove's listings in July of 2024.
Yeah.
And again, you've got to feel that is huge buying power, is it not?
You've got to feel a bit. Look, they've got their own commercial model and everything else there, but isn't there? They're not paid. What did you say it was? Worth 700 agents. That's worth
the equivalent of 700 branches walking out all at the same time. Yeah.
Now, is that? But that's in terms of. I assume that's in terms of volume of listings, right? Because it's certainly not going to be what they're not paying 700 offices worth, are they?
And that's the massive argument, isn't it? That nobody really is. They are never going to be paying what the one brancher pays, or even the 5 brancher, the 6 brancher, nowhere near. They're going to be getting a substantial discount, and the figures are significant enough for when that news came out that they weren't going to be striking a deal. Rightmove had to disclose that to the city. because it's going to affect their share prices.
Do you think, coming at this obviously with your independent agency hat on, do you not always just feel this? I mean, obviously there's not a lot of love lost in that demographic. Do you not think that is just another way that agents are just hugely frustrated, that they feel that there's two-tier policing? Just to segue on this conversation, two-tier portaling is now the phrase that we've just put.
I think in truth,
hybrid agents has got to be a massive bone of contention, hasn't it?
I think in truth that we've been used to two-tier portaling for a long time, though, haven't we? Because we always knew that the corporate rock stars used to get the best deals, that the big brands, your Countrywides, your Spicers, etc., are bound to be doing better than it, because it stands to reason that buying power is just going to be a lot better.
It was a bit more than that, though, wasn't it? I mean, given that they were quite big shareholders in them in the early days, because they cleverly cut them in. So there was a couple of things going on there, as you said, the economies of scale. I think every agent we talk to, we're lucky enough that we talk to agents week in, week out, and we look at what they're doing with suppliers. And suppliers always tell us that the variable pricing is the thing that does their head in. Now, what they also go on to say is it's not that they can't understand that larger agents shouldn't get an economies of scale, because that's the way of the world. What they can't understand is why it is so disproportionate. You know, it's not that it's 10 or 15% cheaper for the larger agents, 10 or 15 times when they haven't got 10 or 15 times the branch network is, I think, one of the massive issues, isn't it?
I think so. I think going back to it at the heart of it, and I love these stories because you get to sort of see those kind of boycott Rightmove forums flare up again, and everyone go, I told you this was going to happen. And just like the far right argument, this has been cooking for a while, it was bound to happen.
Oh, wouldn't it be good? Not that, actually, I've got to be quite careful now, haven't we? Given that some people are actually ending up in jail for incitement. I was just about to say, wouldn't it be fantastic if the boycott, whoever things ended up on the streets?
No, I don't think it's worth that.
Outside Soho Square.
But you know, I think that the reason why the boycott Rightmove sort of movement didn't work is that, and we keep coming back to this, and you can say what you like about your challenger portals, and we've been approached by quite a few very ingenious sort of challenger portals. Each one of them have got a different aspect of tech or whatever that they're going to be launching. So watch this space, because if you are a trailblazer and you want to test this technology, almost sort of beta test it before it gets out to the public, it's worth having a look at. But I think that the public are the people that matter the most when it comes to property portals. So you can get as many agents on as you want, and you can get as much stock on as you want. You've got to go where the fish are feeding, and if the fish are all feeding naturally at Rightmove's pool, then you're going to want to be there.
Yeah, well, we spoke about this though, isn't it? It's the endless onslaught of obviously Rightmove's incredible figures is contrasted a little bit though with the fact that obviously back in the day when almost every agent was on it, they are slipping offices, aren't they? So that it'd be lovely to hear from them to understand what the truth is. I mean, obviously to a degree they have to publish a lot of this stuff, but I'm sure in my head that I saw, was it from one of their own announcements or somebody else independent, that says they've got between 80 or 85% of agents on board. It's massive, it's huge. They're obviously way beyond that. That point of relevance and everything else, but I wonder how far it could go the other way, where the public assumes that everything is on Rightmove, and whether they would start to actually realise that it wasn't, because actually, like I would say back in the bad old days when it was all fragmented and you could go to different portals and find exclusive properties on there. Do you think we're going to go back to that age where actually you are going to have to work a little bit hard to find the listings, with the obviously on the market and CoStar doing more, Zoopla obviously still out there and everything else? What do
It's funny because if you talk to a really dedicated buyer, they will still, although we're not in that post-pandemic sort of era where there was this massive sort of feeding frenzy and they couldn't get into view properties. There are more properties on the market. They still have this sense that agents holding back on some good stuff that almost sits in the bottom drawer and is only for select clientele. Now,
let me guess. You don't put them right on that.
We don't put them on. We don't. Well, to turn around to people and say, "Well, yeah, no, we don't have anything cooking in the back," would be wrong. But I think that they expect that there is a portion of properties that perhaps don't make the internet, that perhaps don't need to, because either the properties are so attractive or the deal is so good that you know that you can source it. But I think also with the rise of that kind of personal agent, so when you're looking at that self-employed model and people sort of really going out there in their own right, I think that lends itself to that sort of private, almost private buyer, private selection. You won't find this on any portal, but you won't find this with any other agent either. You have to come through me to get to it. In New York and places like that, that's exactly how it works. And there are some parts of London. So, I mean, I'm quite familiar with the Bagel Belt property scene down in sort of Golders Green, Hendon. But there's been buyers agents, very, very successful buyers agents that have been operating there for years, and their stuff doesn't hit the portals at all. Because they've always got a very active market and their buyers like the fact that it's almost secretive.
It's amazing, because obviously the States is the most obvious one there. But when I was in Australia, there was always, obviously when they do their fantastic, it's always quite almost... it's performative, isn't it? When they do their open houses and then they do it outside in the street and everything else, and you will always see them there, those buyers advocates or buying agents there representing people at every single one, and it's just second nature there. It's interesting that you've obviously had Henry Pryor, obviously the most high profile one down there in that there London, I suppose. Bit of a mystery as why it hasn't taken off. Is that just because Brits are cheap? Is that the
I think there is that sort of sense sometimes. Well, why should we pay for this? Because you should be grateful that you're taking our money. But I think that it's because Rightmove agents are. Chris Watkins probably has done more to sort of advertise that than anybody else. The fact that there are a bunch of agents out there whose marketing strategy is simply list it, shove it on the portal, and forget about it and let it sort of move itself on. And I think that if we are to move away from that model, then people will understand that there's perhaps some value in what that agent does in order to source the property, but also match it with a buyer. But if the public are to sort of think that everything that is available on Rightmove and it's free for everyone, why should they pay for it?
I don't think we've spoken about this, do we? There's a great agency down in the southeast, down in Kent, called Kent Estate Agents, and they are operating.
Aptly named.
It's there you go, isn't it? Does what it says on the tin. And they have this fantastic, what they call it, it's kind of like matchmaker service there. And it is all about that kind of exclusivity, that off market, you need to talk to us and everything else. And it brings I always remember Adam Walker talking about this from one of his training sessions many years ago before he went into just, doing the M&A activity. And he likened Rightmove as to in the good old days, you would have all those listings. They would be, in your arms, and you'd be able to obviously dispense the knowledge and your experience accordingly. And the equivalent of going on Rightmove was going out into the street and hurling those out, all of those listings and everything else for everyone to pick up themselves. And you lost control, didn't you, at that point there? Some of the very best agents are now trying to get that, obviously, angle back. Some of them are doing it clearly very, very effectively. On the market, what do they call it? The early bird, which was it would go live on, on the market.
You'd get like 48 hours, wouldn't you, on the market before it hits anywhere else. But in effect, on the market again is an open forum. So any buyer looking on there can get it. So it doesn't make it that much more exclusive. But what it meant was that on the market, we're getting a steal on the other portals in terms of kind of market share of eyeballs, if you like, coming first. I think who it suits, who it lends itself really well to, that model, will be any agent that has a high enough profile within a distinct patch or a community. So, you know, if you're a well-known character in a very distinctive area, so that you're known, I don't know, people bump into you at school, supermarkets, they all know what you do, and you're that kind of person, then I think you're going to thrive. You know, that digital mayor almost, they're going to thrive in an environment where people need to come to them because they've got this persona within the community. But if you're a nobody and a cold start, I think that's very, very difficult to get that going.
So if I was coming at this with no bias and knowing how obviously it can wind some people up there, what you're seemingly intimating there is that actually the hybrid agents, where it is much more about the personal brand, will have an easier kind of pitch there. Does that then, if again, just to ask you the question back, does that then show more than ever the need for traditional agencies who have always been very nervous of building up the personal brand of their top people and you know, just defending the corporate brand? Do they need to embrace that, you know, the best of both worlds?
I think you're seeing some agencies already do that really well. So I think one of the latest gurus, and I say this with a full heart because he's a really nice guy in real life as well, but someone like Ian Preston, who is doing the speaker circuit quite a bit. And what they're talking about is this associate model that they have. I know that I've noticed that Mike Nettleton is pushing that as well at his place. And I just think the more and more you see these traditional kind of independent agents acknowledge the fact that there is this battle with ego as well, but also, and that actually leveraging personal brand can be very, very powerful.
The argument has always been, hasn't it, is that if you build up their profile too much, they're going to leave you, get headhunted and everything else. But the absolute guarantee, it's like the old training one. Well, if you don't train them, you're guaranteeing that they're going to leave. Is give them that space to grow into, and you've got much better job, haven't you, surely, of retaining them. I love what, I mean, Ian, it's funny what you're talking about there, Ian. I mean, Ian's very much he's almost like property Steve Jobs at the moment. His talks are so compelling when you listen to him there. And as you said, what I like is, this isn't based around somebody coming, you know, either outside of industry or from another country lecturing us. This is somebody who's run an extremely, you know, successful UK agency, and he's evolving it with what he sees in front of him in the marketplace and seeing the opportunity, isn't it? So
I think so. I think it's about getting ahead of this thing before it sort of it runs you over and it sort of drags you along. I think they're getting ahead of it and they're saying, look, we acknowledge that there is both a need for this model because people feel that they want to be enabled to be the best versions of themselves. And to do that, they'll want to have some ownership over their own business. No one wants to be an employee forever, but they also want a support of a great network. So can we allow them to do that? And I think it's also acknowledging that actually, in some respects, the public react really well to having it's lovely, isn't it lovely, to be able to go to an agent where you know who they are, you've got their mobile number. If you've got any concerns along the way, it's almost like a personal concierge service more than anything else. You can pick up the phone, you can get in touch with them. Isn't that much better than going to a faceless corporate entity where you are just one of a number? And you don't, you know, nobody wants that. So I think as services evolve, I think, and ironically, as these technology becomes more sophisticated, I think what we will value more is the personal relationship.
Do you think that we need, in the way that agents for a long period of time couldn't distance the technology and some of the things that the online agents were doing, and the fact that it was Purple Bricks or whoever else there, and actually it took a while for them to actually almost to absorb some of the best bits actually of what those guys were doing there?
I think that it's people like you and me who've changed. No, I think the truth is I think the truth is there was a time where big tech that was helping, so I'm talking about things that will sound very simple nowadays, but if you were to go back, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago to an average estate agent and say you can have an online booking system where the clients can help themselves to an appointment, and it will automatically try and tie that up with the vendor and confirm all these things, and everyone will get an email, it all slot in. You'd say, oh no, that's not going to work in our agency, and by the way, we can't afford to build it. So it was only the likes of people like Purple Bricks that had it, or other online entities.
But I remember there, David, I remember specifically people coming back, as you just said there, actually, and actually I don't think they were even looking at the difficulty of building it. It was, actually, we're all about customer service here. We're all about talking to it, not realising that actually supports it rather than takes it away.
I think to a great extent we hate change. We do, and we've been very resistant of it. But I think the barrier to entry, this is what I was going to say in terms of cost and availability. So if you've only got a tech spend of, excluding the portals, right? I would argue that if you gave me a budget of 350 quid a month, which I don't think is an awful lot, I think I can buy you an immense amount of tech to power your agency. And you could probably have everything that you would need to compete with one of the big boys. And it's,
do you know a consultancy that can help you out with that?
I wonder. But you know what? I'd actually love to do a test case on that. And I might, and I've been threatening to do this for a while, where I would literally go and build it out myself and just see how it would thrive.
We've bounced this about, the way they do fantasy footballers, that's about it. We should do fantasy agency. And you're given, as you said, you're given a $1,500 a month, and you can blow that all on Rightmove if you want to. But actually, you can try and go Facebook. You can try and go. That'd be quite fascinating to kind of come on that. Well,
I think it is, but I think the message is that whether you come to a fantastic consultancy like ours and we point you in the right direction to the best suppliers at the best prices, or you go out there alone and you try and scoop it up. Today, in 2024, you, as an independent agent, have access to every bit of tech at affordable prices to compete with the big boys. And they are people that you're really benefiting from that, because they must have spent hours in dev, hours getting that done. And we've now all at this late stage able to walk in and jump on top of it. Just look at what some people are doing with AI. It's pretty scary.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right on that point, isn't it? Let those guinea pigs, do the work, and you can jump on board at that right stage.
Talking of guinea pigs that were once a threat, but are now coming back as well-fed hamsters or gerbils. Is
this a Richard Gere joke?
Is that a true story?
I don't. Again, I'm just thinking about social media and
I never understood. There was at some point when I was growing up a bunch of urban legends that would all involve I don't know, vermin and sexual activity. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, which is what I just call going to Wetherspoons.
But talking of things you thought you got rid of but have come back to bite you, the emoov story, I think is
yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting, because emoov have been, I think, so long out of the picture in terms of being.
I thought it was done. I didn't realise there were assets to buy it.
I thought it was done. I thought it was like the Knight Rider franchise. It's done. They may bring it back for a special on Channel 5 where David Hasselhoff wants another 50 grand or something. Yeah. But other than that, it's dead. But I saw Russell Quirk in his own very kind of magnanimous way, sort of wishing them well.
Did he? I missed this. I saw the story, and I was going to say it'd be fascinating to have heard from Russell just to see. Did he wish them well? What is that? What would be fascinating? Because the other thing about this as well is a much more recent one than that you've got to imagine there's some really good tech sat around there is Booming, of course. So Booming obviously put a lot of time, energy around things like the smart valuation stuff and everything else there. That clearly must be sat in a Area 51 session, PropTech version somewhere, ready for somebody to pick up. And I was fascinated just on that emoov one. Is like somebody actually went in there and obviously, bought the assets up there. And how long must emoov have been out now? Is it 5 years? Is it even older than that? When did
it's quite a long time ago. Let's just have a quick look. 14 years after its first incarnation.
So is there anything still relevant there, or is it? That would be
here's the thing. Online estate agent Griffin Property Co. relaunched officially as emoov after buying the brand and its tech for an undisclosed sum from Mashroom back in May. So Griffin Property Co. was a family-run estate agency and one of the few success stories in the online sector.
Good lads, actually.
So it's interesting, but as part of the rebrand, emoov has updated its packages, and sellers will be able to market their property on all major UK portals from 295 quid in advance to or 795 on a no sale, no fee basis, and lettings packages start at just £39.50. Now, although Rusty has clearly wished them well in a sort of statesman-like way, I think he knows, and he's already been quite vocal, hasn't he, about this kind of low-cost model not being able to sustain itself.
I think the fascinating thing in the way that online agency is going to come back with a version 2.0, just like everything does. We spoke about in a tiny sense. QR codes dead and dusted. They came back bouncing back with obviously lockdown and everything else. They're everywhere again there, and businesses have to keep evolving and changing. And for me, the largest change we're going to be seeing now is whether it's online or whether it's hybrid. Some of those hybrid agents who are not just discounting and are working that personal brand and everything else. People like Katie Poor and everything else there.
Yeah.
And generating, what most people would say is a good fee and delivering a personal service. That's a really interesting demographic that's being thrown into the mix and makes this industry, I think, a lot more interesting.
I think it does, and I think that you make the mistake if you make any kind of equivalence between sort of that self-employed agent model that you just referred to, people like Katie Poor, with online, these cheap kind of online agencies. I don't think it's the same level of threat at all to the traditional model. I think it fits into the ecosystem a lot better, and I think that these sort of very low rent models like emoov, like Purple Bricks, like Stripe, whatever it is, it's going after the Tommy Robinsons of sellers. You know what I mean?
Yaxley, isn't it? What's it, Stephen Yaxley?
Stephen Lennon Yaxley.
With his Irish passport, living in Cyprus. Wow. Yeah.
No, but I think it goes for that lowest. What I mean is the lowest common denominator that does not care about service levels. It feels that the agents themselves have so little to offer. Yeah. That all they're buying is a bit of a real estate on the portals. That's literally all they're doing. And I don't know anybody that's come out the other side of a cheap model like that as a customer who said, I had an amazing service. And I really enjoyed being a client of theirs. What they'll tell you is, I had to put my own sale through. Yeah. I had to chase the solicitors. It was a nightmare getting hold of everybody. If I didn't have done this, but the sad thing is, they refuse to believe that they're culpable in all of this because they didn't choose the right agent. So instead, it reinforces their view that agents had no value.
I was just about to say I was going to disagree with you, and I said one of the issues I have with, albeit the Academy's absolutely fantastic home buying, trend survey that they do every year, and you need to get involved with it if you don't. there is every single year they ask them, is price an issue? And every single time, overwhelmingly, like Peter will tell us, Peter Knight will tell us, it's not a factor there. We're telling this there. Because I'm telling you now, the British public does not want, nobody ever defines themselves as cheap. And if people weren't out there cheap, you wouldn't find Ryanair, you wouldn't find Aldi, there is a demographic, whether that is between 20 and 30%, who will buy and almost always buy on it. And we might as well be honest about it and actually just look at that. And I've spoke about this endlessly. One of the reasons I absolutely loved Adam Day when he did Hatched was he wasn't one of the ones, the dickheads, who came out and said, you have to be anti-agent to make your own model work. He said, look, I've come from that background. I have a lot of time and respect for it. This is about understanding that we've got a niche that this will work in there. And I think that for me is one of the most, the interesting points about this is, where will that market, the market sort of rest when all this comes out? And the truth is, it's just going to keep evolving and bouncing back and forth, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that agents actually don't mind other low-cost agencies coming into the marketplace because they genuinely feel that will soak up a number of customers that they probably didn't want in the first place anyway, because they put such low value in the agent's personal service and they're not willing to pay the right amount of money in any event. So let somebody else look after those clients. I think what has always been traditionally really hard to forgive, and you can see this, I don't know if you noticed, but there was one of my favorite commentators from the property industry recently. You had Matt Baldock did a post in which he ever so slightly gave a bit of a side swipe to one of his co-panelists, which I think was Kenny Bruce at the time. Okay. And to back Matt on that, I don't think he backed down from that position, even though he got some. What did he? Sorry, I didn't say. What did he say? He basically said that he'd never ever thought that he would be mentioned in the same sentence as one of the Bruce brothers, and was only happy to have that be the case because what they were actually doing on that occasion was sort of a good thing. And I think that he got a lot of stick for that because a lot of people piped up and went, well, Kenny's got an MBE or whatever it is, and he's done loads for charity, and he's done this, that, and the other. And Matt's retort, and if you speak to Matt privately, and I know that a lot of agents would agree with this, it doesn't matter what you do for charity. It will not absolve you of the cardinal sin of spending. And this is what the agents feel, is that the cardinal sin was going out there and spending money educating a public to despise agents or look down on them. They feel that did more damage than anything else, and I think that's true. So I don't think agents are threatened.
Stereotypes, you mean, basically, in terms
of I think so. I think you've gone out there and using sort of that dog whistle rhetoric. You've had all these people sort of line up and go, yeah, agents are expensive. Yeah, agents don't do the good job, and they don't do this, that, and the other. Now, the opposite side of that argument is also true, and we've always made this argument that as damaging as that might have been, it was also the impetus for a lot of us to wake up and change. Because we realised that we had to prove them wrong.
I've told you, I've said this many times and made myself unpopular as only I can do for years, that was one of the best things that had happened to you, because actually hiding behind this mythology of what actually an estate agent done on one level worked, on the other hand, it didn't do you the best job, because to be able to go out there and actually make the invisible visible and hold together chains, deal with solicitors, do all this stuff that actually the average schmo in the street wouldn't know about because they only sell property every 10, 20 years, whatever else. It was a vital element there. So I think for the best agents, that was quite a cleansing sort of exercise, really.
In a funny way, they've earned their MBEs, services to the property industry, by actually forcing agents to go out there and train. We trained more. We honed our marketing material more. We had to make an impassioned argument. to the members of the public as to why we're stood in there, why we're worth giving the job to, and why we're worth the money that we.
I can tell you that Pareto rule now is of the 20% being better and moving away from the rest is never more true. When you look at the quality of leading independent agents, that are out there now on the other side, it is awesome looking at what some of those guys do. I think going back to your point again there, and I can't stress enough again. This is not related to anything to do with the Bruces or anything else there, but that whole point about charity could not be more apt. Do you know who does more in terms of work for charity in their local areas and communities than anybody else? The mafia. So it's organised crime has always been quite good at saying.
Do you know what? Every bit of me was going, please don't make the Jimmy Savile analogy. Please don't make the Jimmy Savile analogy. When you said mafia, I was like,
you're getting soft. You're getting soft these days. You're not being edgy anymore. No, I just think you're absolutely right, and everything else on that point of view. It's always going to be very difficult there, isn't it? In terms of going back to it, I think just rolling back just a little bit as well back to it. Do you remember that ICG group and Ian Preston was on there? I think it was Chris Watkins and Ian was there, and Ian was making the point, and Ian's never been afraid to obviously say what needs to be said, even if it's not the most popular thing. And he was saying, no, I understand that many of you are in the same place with hybrid agents as you were with online agents. And he wasn't saying you have to do this. What he was saying is you are going to be either losing or facing a battle to keep your best talent in the years to come, because they are going to have their eyes turned by that hybrid model. So why would you not work with people like Ian Preston or doing it yourself to enable them to grow within your own organisation and do that? And I think that is quite a grown-up conversation that people need to have.
And growth is the key to all of this. So if
that's what our show is all about.
It is personal growth. But if growth is what you're looking for as a business owner, I would argue that's your only real benchmark for success, right? How far your agency is going to spread. We always used to measure that by, well, how many branches have they opened and how many branches have they got? This is a 12 brancher, a 16 brancher, a 20 brancher. With that hybrid model, with that model of sort of associates, you can expand your brand into areas and patches.
Yeah,
see,
very quickly.
There was a vanity in branches, right? But when I hear a branch, I hear 7 members of staff. I hear 7 lots of people. I hear 7 lots of HR.
You hear overheads,
I hear overheads just going, But if I hear that associate model, I think, no, that's a great way for me to go into an area that I'm not tapping at the moment. It's a piece of the pie I'm not ever going to get to eat because I'm never going to open a branch there. But I can stick Simon there, and he's going to be the best agent for that city. And I will start to link up. I think that really makes sense.
Do you know one of the challenges that I think that hybrid model is really going to struggle with? I don't know. Is that us or is that somebody? Anyway, we'll check in.
That's the mafia, obviously.
Oh yes, okay. Sorry, yeah.
Sharon.
We're the Podfathers, Sharon. I think the challenge comes from the hybrid model, and to a degree, obviously, previously with online agencies, has always been the case. Is where does the consistency come from? Because, of course, the great thing about, liberating Simon, who you were just talking about, Mike, and he will be fantastic. He's a Simon. But let's say you have David in the next patch who's useless. And you've gone to that brand because actually you were looking for a brand is meant to deliver consistency and everything else there. They've really got to be quite strict, haven't they, in terms of just not letting anybody on board and damaging that brand. So whereas that a lot of that model seems to me to be almost like a benign Ponzi scheme of recruitment, they need to be really, really tough.
So do you know what I think you can probably learn from this is that there is existing traditional models of franchising, obviously. And I think that over years, us independent agents who are a little bit more agile tend to think of the big corporate models as very prescriptive. You've got to do this and you can only advertise there and you can only do that. And on a Thursday, we'll have a dial out Thursday where we only make outgoing, all that bullshit that we used to look down on. But actually, there was a reason for all of those rules, and it's the systems and processes that mean that if you walked into a McDonald's in Liverpool, but walked into McDonald's in Manchester, it's the same process. And to a great extent, that's the secret of a well-run franchise, that if you were to go into a Belvoir in Liverpool and a Belvoir in Manchester, they're going to be adhering to the same thing. So there is consistency there, and that's what they're trying to deliver. And I think that the people that try this associate model, they're going to have to balance the personal uniqueness of that agent with very rigorous systems and processes so that they don't divert from the overall company model. So it's going to be interesting.
I can tell you that isn't actually strictly true about the consistency of McDonald's. After experiencing the Shanghai McDonald's and a very tricky flight afterwards, it's not always 100%. But yeah, I get the point. The point in general stands without a shadow of a doubt.
Talk to me. I mean, this has been a very unscripted, intelligent conversation all about the associate model and the future of agency. But tell me a little bit about reputation. You had some fantastic figures you wanted to throw at me.
No, well, don't tell me that now. I thought we'd bounce way away from that. I have to go back.
Hang on. Wait. We're going to bring Sharon in.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is how many offices lose lots of business when one person leaves. Too often, it is not the brand or the name above the door, but one or two individuals in that particular office. Yeah. It can be.
I think that's, if you look at going back to that model in Australia and America and everything else there, it's much more similar to a experienced trained person, like a dentist or something like that, or you're going back, you go with your hairdresser or whatever else. Once you've built that relationship, you travel, you go with them if you can do around, as long as they've not moved obviously outside of area. I do think, though, what you were talking about there in terms of the office model is quite an interesting one. And okay, it might be a really niche view on this from PropTech world, but they do need to also change with the times as well, because far too many of them, and of course, are stuck with that office-based charging model. And I know that really kind of frustrates people. You've seen people quite cleverly, like Street, who have come out with, obviously, for their CRM software, they've come out with the pricing based around the number of listings, haven't they? Which they would argue is a fairer model. My old Robert Reapit, of course, did that on the accountancy and the letting side of the software. They did it about the amount of managed tenancies. I feel like at the top level, the office model, just because that's how Rightmove have always done it, we know they've already broken that model already. So it'd be interesting to understand if the portals will evolve themselves, is given that that's such a bone of contention for so many agents, why will they not break that model down for more traditional agents as well and give a level of fairness or more transparency around it?
We know, I mean, I don't know the particular financials of it, but we know that there is a completely different Rightmove package, isn't there, for
geo charging or geo.
Yeah, that's what they call it, right? So is that based on number of instructions within a defined geographical area, i.e.
The clue was in geo, but I didn't want to mock it.
The clue was in geo. Thank you. No waste of my university degree right here. But I think it gets to some. I think the model works on something of like 20 to 30 listings, and then they say, right, at that point you need your own subscription.
But do you know what one of the big one is that suppliers genuinely need to get out? And I understand they actually, most of the time, they haven't gone out of their way to cheat agents. They have done it because they're trying to look at a chargeable, at a fairer model. But a lot of suppliers, we know it when we look at this ourselves, when we're just trying to do comparisons between what's good and what's not, is this salespeople and the people at the top of those businesses have lost control of the simple pricing there. And it means that it looks like you're trying to hide stuff from them, and it's really, really difficult to try and bring that into play. And then you get into real world scenarios as well, because I've just said how easy that would be, obviously, to talk about the number of listings or the number of managed tenancies. I remember back in the day with me, that was all very well, but then my Northeast clients were saying, hang on a minute, so you're going to charge me the same for a listing in Middlesbrough or in Newcastle as you are for Central London, where the rents might be 20 grand.
Can I tell you where I think this is all going to end up? and I don't know when, but it will happen. And it will link us nicely back to the Bruce brothers as well in this conversation, is that I think we spend too much time as agents concentrating on what Rightmove might be charging us or what the portals are delivering to us. Yep. We at the most basic core, we want exposure and we want leads. That's what we want. And ironically, buyer leads and tenant leads are probably second on the list of what we want. The first on the list of what we want is instructions, always. Gotcha. We have this arrogance that buyers and renters will come to find us anyway, which I don't know. If you took away the portals, would that be the case? We need to look at that in more detail. But I think where this is going to end up, and I think what we're not looking at properly, is that, you know, that whole adage of if a service is free, you are effectively the commodity. And I think that the members of the public that are using these platforms, I think the next iteration of your Rightmove, your Zooplas, your on the markets is going to be more about what they can squeeze out of the actual buyer or the tenant in a lifetime of them either buying, selling, renting, buying furniture, insurance products, mortgages, whatever it is. And that links back to booming, really, doesn't it? And what the Bruces were trying to do.
That was the genuinely innovative thing, weren't there? That when I listened to Michael talk to me about it, I thought, oh, okay, well, that is you are coming at this from a different angle.
And I think in many respects, very smart people, and I'm sure they did their research on it, and I'm sure that the figures bear themselves out. I think they were probably just a little bit too early. And I dare say other people who've already got that foothold in the industry. So if you are a Rightmove and you're looking at your next bit of revenue stream, why not create something where you can add value to the people rather than just the agents? And it'd be interesting to see how agents treat that whole balance. So watch this space. I don't think it's...
We like big calls, don't we? We normally, both of us try to make calls in different directions so that the podcast...
We all said that opening a sensible debate about immigration and Brexit would never lead to violence on the streets. And we got that right, didn't we?
Hang on a minute, I've just got a knock at the door. You asked me, yeah, it was a good look. It was just a little, as I said, look, I think it's obviously everyone's a little bit away for the summer at the moment, and obviously we're all about reviews. And our friends at the Esters had a good article which we'll post up in the links afterwards. And it was basically just looking at, obviously, promoting their fantastic event and the stuff that they do with reviews. But it was all about why reviews matter more than ever. And again, just some of the stats that were just jumping out was Google estimates that 70% of a customer's buying decision is made online before they contact you for the first time. Now, one of the things that I'm always very nervous about, though, and that's why I wanted to discuss it today, is where you talk about consumer things around buying widgets or stuff off Amazon, around some of the really, the big decisions like buying a car, buying a home and everything else. So you as an agent, that's what I wanted to quiz you about is, do you believe that stat is still relevant in that same number? 70% of a customer's buying decision is made online before they contact you for the valuation? Or do you think that...
Shall I tell you what the most eye-opening bits of stats that I think that everybody should... I keep going on about this, and it sounds like he's paid me to say... Oh, God, I sound like Chris Watkin. He hasn't paid me to say this. I do it out of the goodness of my own heart, okay? But genuinely... One of the things that really, really made me stop and take a good think and challenge the preconceptions I have about our industry was the Voice of the Agent survey by Simon Levitt.
The better stuff was great, wasn't it?
Because, and where I felt that it held itself out slightly more than, say, there are other great surveys, such as the ones that the Property Academy runs every year, which has its own value. But what this did was it had a whole section on what the public think about agents, what agents think the public think, and it brought it all together. So for argument's sake, we always, if you speak to any agent in any area and you say, how many valuations should I get? They would always say, we should really get, most people get 3. They get 3 valuations. The truth is, there are only 2 normally the public think about when they're instructing an agent. And so very much, and it's not necessarily 50-50, that's two that they're aware of as being prominent in the area, and they don't bother with the rest. And in actual fact, they've kind of already made their mind up. So if you're right, Simon, if the statistic is you are 50-50 already, just because you've only got two in your mind, and then you can help tip that a little bit more in favor of one or the other, I think that's an area worth doubling down on, really, isn't it?
I think so, and I think that the key thing for me about this is that Joe Gordian of Spectre was doing the RAN regionals with us, and there was a few things that was jumping out there. But they used to have that product that's it was called Hello Again. I think it's been brought in as anniversary now there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it exactly, but it's not going to be more than 1% off. Only 14% of people have gone back to the agent that they used previously. That is a appalling figure, to be able to highlight, which, basically, because 86% of them by definition have not gone to the agent that they used previously. Now, there's a whole set of different, that you can explain it away by clearly it will be been a period of time. But what a failure of not having kept in touch with that. With that.
You know what? And that comes down. What does that come down to? It comes down to so many different factors, and there are people that make a very good living on telling you what those factors are and how to hone it. But we had a chat, didn't we, Simon? Just to give one particular supplier a plug, the Home Move Box people who provide fantastic boxes to agents so they can hand them over on completion. I think the way we say goodbye to a buyer or to a tenant is very often.
It should be over a while. We'll see you soon, shouldn't it?
It's substandard. Yeah. At best, at the end of a sales process, it's been so fraught, and the moving day itself is so traumatic for buyers. What you get is a washed out version of a buyer turning up at an agent's office, usually in their joggers, because they're moving and they're sweaty and they're tired and they've got.
David, it's that bad that you don't want a photo or video with them on the.
No, you don't want. Believe me, I have asked buyers over the years, can we just have a quick photo? Can you get? We used to have one of these Facebook cutout things. Honestly, nobody wants to do that. Well, because when you come to get your keys from an agent, you're at the end of a process that already feels like you've run a marathon. The actual day itself is bullshit, because you are schlepping boxes left, right, and center. You've got removal men that are never patient. You've got to get into a house, out of a house. You've got to clean one. You've got to start to clean the other. It's going to be days before you live like a human being in your new place. So genuinely, all of that means that when you come to collect the keys from an agent, it ain't the happiest day of your life, and it's not the nicest of experiences, and there was never really a good way to say goodbye. You can make that more pleasant. I have seen many agents that create a real experience. So there are some people that add a finishing touch, like location. Andy Overman, I think, puts a big yellow cross on the door. Well, it's not a cross, it's a ribbon. He ties a big ribbon on the door of the house that they're buying, so it feels a little bit more special. There are some people that give gifts, completion gifts. I think it's important.
Too many people steer away from it because it looks trite, doesn't it? And I think in the past, let's be honest, in the early days, I think those free boxes that sometimes they did weren't maybe of the best quality. But it's Adrian, wasn't it, there at that Home Move box? Those premier packs that he's delivering, and I've seen some of the ones they've done, knocked up for the likes of Hunters, Manning States, and people like that. They are, you are going to be impressed with that kind of service, and that's fed back by the kind of customer satisfaction scores that the vendors give back to them, aren't they? In terms of, it's fantastic.
And it's also interesting because I think that and sorry to give them another plug, but if you were to look at location again, they give their tenants a lovely little wooden carved box which has their logo on it and everything, and inside it's a little toolkit. And you're giving the tenants the message that, well, here's something for moving in day. And also, not everything that goes wrong with your property is going to be our responsibility. You can pitch in as well. And I think it's actually a beautiful way of starting a relationship with somebody, to give them something.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more on that. It's a really, I think there's a whole host of different things. But we were going back to, that point. Your point about two coming in, and lots of people will snort on that, and lots of lazy valuers will say it's nothing like that. That's because they wanted to. Oh, I was up against 5, 6, 7. The one thing that is absolutely true in this day and age is that we are all too time poor. So the idea of in your head seeing a multitude of valuers is just not on the cards for most people, is it?
Now, here's the thing: if you're an agent and you're watching this, and you feel like in your head, you've always justified it that you are one of 8 or 9 people going into value a property because you never seem to get a very good conversion rate. It's about now getting you to that top 2 position. It's more important than ever, both in the mind of the public and also for your own well-being going forward. You need to. There are loads of also rans, and there are loads of smaller people who sort of pick up all those instructions that have been on the market forever and ever. But if you genuinely want the best bit of business, I think you have to concentrate on elevating your business up to those top 2 slots, both in terms of reputation and also in actual what you can deliver in customer service.
Yeah. And Sharon couldn't agree with more of that. Yeah, it's don't forget both sides of that. You've got the potential for a double bubble for a really important review, which again is what we were just talking about here. David, let me just throw these couple of other stats that the Esthers were just talking about as well, and just say whether you think these are spot on. 95% of clients read online reviews before buying a product. I mean, I think those are fairly ubiquitous stats, aren't they? You wouldn't disagree with that, would you?
Yeah, completely. And some of us cheat by not even reading the reviews. We look at the number of reviews. So if I go on to Amazon and I see that one product has got 42 5-star reviews, but another one's got 4,500 5-star reviews, I ain't reading them. I'm just going with the one with the higher number.
That number gives confidence, doesn't it? Because you can blag your way, influence 50, 100, but when you're getting to that level that's why I always look at companies like emoov that have over 20,000. I can't remember whether it's either 4.8, 4.9 or something like that. On Trustpilot, which is one of the strictest review platforms you've got. You're dealing. However, anyone wants to sneer at that, you go away and do it then if it's that easy, because it's really hard to gain.
To actually concentrate on getting volume of reviews, and this is why reputation management platforms do well and they exist, is because it increases your ability to be able to do that. But I think it's important, the strength in numbers.
The last one I'll say is, and I said before on the thing, is there 83% don't care about reviews unless they are dated, named, and relevant. That's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, we always took a decision about. That's why we put video reviews on Kerfuffle, because we believed it. Everyone has to be named and everything else on there. But I think where I'm seeing actually, where there's a massive gap for the wider. The Goliaths of the review world, the Trustpilots, the Googles. I still don't think, even though Facebook's all about video, I don't think their reviews are. We've put video reviews on there because, again, you get that sense that they are much more real, don't you, when you're doing it?
I think so. I think you get to see the person, you get to hear whether or not it's scripted, and sometimes if they are relaxed, there's a little bit more umming and ahhing. It just feels right.
Until, of course, Gorilla AI allows you to just fill in, thousands and thousands of these artificial.
But your thing of sort of recent endorsement, I think that really sort of, recent reviews count much more than sort of if you log on to, and I sometimes do it on our own platform. If I'm having a review with a particular supplier and I say, let's have a look at your reviews, and I log into their page, and the last time they had a review was 2 years ago, I say, look, Boris Johnson typically got a higher proportion of the vote than any other Tory prime minister previously, and now look at it. Look how it's shifted. So you're only as good as your most recent election and your most recent reviews.
Look, there's no need to go on. You've ended that perfectly, almost on time. People say this is unscripted. We've been working on this for weeks. This is how we make it look so natural, isn't it? Because of all the months of training we put in.
Before you go, I noticed, talking of training, you have been intensively swimming. You're back on your fitness regimen. So I want you to give us your Whaley's top tips for the week. What are you going to conquer this week, Whaley? What are your goals? And what are your tips for those people out there who only dream of being a demigod like you?
So what would it be? Don't go to Weatherspoons. That's important while you're in this fitness. It is unfortunate because obviously the footy season kicks off next week, so it's going to be a month. And I'm also off to Switzerland, so that's cheese and chocolate. So this visage you see in front of you, this slimline, well, just less chubby version might not be there. It's just it's all in your mind, David. It's all in your mind.
What's in Switzerland?
Nazi gold.
Other than Nazi gold and chocolate and cuckoo clocks, what's in Switzerland?
There is a family member's chateau that we are shamelessly stealing from them, and I think chateau isn't the right thing. What is it? Is it a lodge? I have no idea, really.
Believe me, it's a cabin, but once Whaley's been there, it'll be completely chateaued.
Yeah, exactly right. So yes,
well, enjoy your holes. Enjoy the rest of the holidays. Everybody will be back to school in a couple of weeks, and you've got to start thinking about pushing out your marketing cycle for September. The winter will be upon us. We've got to start getting some sales in, so we've got some completions before Christmas.
Oh, that was just one thing there. Actually, I said we did those RAN regionals as well. We asked every agent around, I can't remember how many we did, loads of them though, how obviously when we go around the regions and we talk to them, everybody was just looking, I know we're on the whole an uplifted, optimistic lot. The end to the year they were looking at with huge satisfaction, and I think that's great.
Well, from me to you, a lot of love, a lot of success this week. Have a good one. What is it that you say at the end of every Kerfuffle morning meeting? Go smash it, guys.
I don't think I've ever. That was my avatar, AI avatar, so I've never really logged in. So I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great week.
Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.